Maria, the daughter of a duke from the Miro kingdom, arrives in the grand capital of Rubini to live with her childhood friend Aida, the daughter of Duke Amadis. She is excited to reunite after 2 years and is ready to greet her best friend with a hug, but is immediately forced to act like a proper noble lady, which she struggles to do without making it awkward. Duke Amadis finds her behavior amusing and hopes her lively personality will help lift Aida's mood. Soon, Maria comes to know that Aida is going to marry the crown prince, Renato. She becomes instantly curious and excited and starts asking many questions, but Aida calmly explains that the engagement was not her choice, as her father made the decision. Although she accepts it, she does not seem happy. Aida asks Maria why she transferred to Rubini. Maria answers with complete honesty, saying that this place has everything, including potential husbands, which is now her main goal in life. Back in the Miro kingdom, Maria used to train like a warrior because she was expected to inherit her family's title. However, everything changed when her younger brother, Teo, was born, and her role was immediately reassigned from future head of the family to please go get married. Her father made this decision without hesitation. Surprisingly, Maria does not seem upset at all. She is genuinely happy for her brother and fully supports him. Besides, she is quite confident that her skills will still be useful, especially since she casually carries brass knuckles with a family photo inside, which she treats as perfectly normal, noble lady behavior. At the academy, Maria quickly notices that Aida is both admired and quietly disliked. Some girls greet her politely, while others send sharp, jealous looks in her direction. It is the usual noble social atmosphere. Not long after, Maria meets a boy and cheerfully introduces herself, telling him to call her Mimi, only to discover that he is Placido, the younger brother of Renato. Fortunately, Placido finds the situation amusing rather than awkward, especially when he remembers how Maria once threw spiky chestnuts at him as a child. Aida, on the other hand, would very much like the ground to open up and save her from the embarrassment. And as they spend more time together, Placido attempts to introduce Maria to his older brother, Renato. Unfortunately, Renato is far too busy being serious and focused on his duties to even notice them, making it clear that he is not the most approachable person. Later, Maria somehow manages to send another noble girl flying, and then she meets Eleonora, who appears elegant but gives off a slightly suspicious impression. Despite everything, Maria carries on as if nothing unusual has happened, which, for her, is probably true. That night, Maria begins to connect the dots and realizes that Aida seems much closer to Placido than to her own fiancé, Renato, which feels suspicious. Still, she decides not to dwell on it too much, and instead focuses on her main goal, finding a husband. At a party, Maria ends up dancing with Placido, and at first, she panics because dancing is clearly not her strongest skill. Still, she quickly shifts into her usual high-energy attitude and enjoys herself far more than she expects. After the dance, her attention immediately moves to food, which she treats as just as important as socializing. During this time, Placido explains that Aida is not as perfect as she seems, and has been under constant pressure from noble life. Hearing this makes Maria realize she never truly noticed how much Aida has been struggling, and she quietly promises to protect her, no matter what happens. In the meantime, Maria continues writing cheerful letters to her family, assuring them that she is doing well, while casually mentioning that she is still unmarried. Before the big event, Aida attempts to teach Maria how to behave more like a proper noble lady. However, the results are far from perfect, as Maria gives compliments in a very unusual way, such as saying that Aida's hair looks like gold, and then struggling to explain what she actually means. On their way to the party, Maria begins to wonder why Aida rarely spends time with her fiancé, and this question stays in her mind until their carriage suddenly stops because it is blocked by another carriage belonging to Eleonora. They check on her out of concern, but she coldly refuses any help. And although Aida respects her decision and chooses to move on, the entire moment feels strange and unsettling. Maria cannot stop thinking about Eleonora, but there is no time to dwell on it because they soon arrive at the graduation party, which is grand and filled with nearly every important person in the kingdom. Not long after, the two princes of Rubini make their entrance, and the crowd reacts with overwhelming excitement, as many admire Renato for his cold and serious demeanor. In contrast, others are completely charmed by Placido's friendly and gentle nature. However, Maria quickly notices something unusual, as Eleonora is walking right behind Renato, and it becomes clear that he is escorting her instead of his fiancée, Aida, which does not go unnoticed by the other girls, who immediately begin questioning Aida. Seeing Eleonora clinging to Renato again makes the situation look even worse. Maria has had enough, so she steps in, grabs Aida, and firmly says they are leaving. Aida, however, remains calm and explains that people are naturally curious about the prince, and about her as well. She admits that it is exhausting, not knowing who is truly concerned and who is simply being nosy. Maria saying that she only speaks honestly, and soon the two of them are laughing again. But then Maria looks up and sees Renato escorting Eleonora once more. People are saying that Eleonora's carriage broke down, and that Renato offered her a ride. While Maria is still trying to make sense of everything, Renato suddenly turns around and locks eyes with her. He walks straight toward her and casually remarks that this makes things easier. Before she can react, he grabs her hand, mistaking her for Aida, and then loudly announces that their engagement is over, right in front of everyone. Placido immediately steps in and demands to know what is going on, but Renato does not back down. He claims that Aida has been secretly jealous of Eleonora and has been harassing and following her behind the scenes. Eleonora, clearly panicking, tries to point out that Maria is not Aida, but Renato continues speaking. He insists that he has evidence from his investigation and demands that Aida be suspended from the academy and apologize immediately. Meanwhile, Maria stands there for a moment, unsure of what to do, but then she looks back at Aida and sees how hurt and devastated she is. Seeing this makes everything clear to her, reminding her of their friendship and the promise she made to protect her. Without hesitating any longer, Maria grabs Renato by the wrist and firmly tells him that he is completely wrong. She then introduces herself as Maria Anavazzi, making it known that he has mistaken her for someone else, and points out that his real fiancée, Aida, is standing right behind her. Not holding back at all, she bluntly tells him that the first thing he should do is get himself a pair of glasses. This causes total chaos at the graduation party. Duke Amedis collapses on the spot from the sheer shock of the public denunciation. And while doctors are called to help Duke Amedis, Renato's attendant, Raimondo, drops into a deep bow and apologizes to everyone on behalf of the royal household. Renato stands there looking completely mortified and wishes he could disappear. Maria remains furious because Renato insulted her best friend Aida by claiming she was a bully and announcing an annulment to the wrong person. Aida explains that she and Renato barely ever meet, so he literally does not know what her face looks like. Although Maria finds this excuse pathetic, Aida remains composed and tells Maria not to be too hard on him because he is actually quite wise. Aida is more concerned that Maria's public outburst has ruined her own chances of finding a catch to marry. Maria realizes she is now seen as a wretched lady with a broken engagement she never even officially had. Raimondo eventually summons Maria to the royal palace for an official apology meeting. While waiting alone in a luxurious drawing room, Maria passes the time by eating world-class pastries made by a top-tier chef. When Renato enters, he surprises Maria by correctly pronouncing her last name, which most people get wrong. He offers a sincere and proper apology, explaining that his mistake came from years of avoiding Aida. He had left her entirely to the care of his younger brother Placido, and the only thing he remembered about his fiancée was her golden hair. When he saw Maria's blonde hair across the party hall, he assumed she was Aida. Maria accepts the apology, but asks why Renato would choose such a public and self-destructive way to break an engagement. Renato reveals that he knows that Placido and Aida have been in love since they were children. Because Aida's father had forced her into an engagement with Renato, the only way for the lovers to be together was if Renato lost his position. He intentionally tried to cause a scandal so he would be disinherited, allowing Placido to become the heir and marry Aida. He admits he executed the plan poorly by dragging Maria, a complete stranger, into the mess. Maria realizes that the cancelled engagement is actually good for her friend, but she keeps Aida's feelings a secret for now. She tells Renato that if he wants to make amends, he should stop the formal introductions and take her out for a good steak. Before they leave, Maria notices how exhausted Renato looks from the weight of his royal duties. She teaches him the Anavazzi family counting song, which she usually uses to put her 4-year-old brother Teo to sleep. She makes ridiculous faces for each number until Renato is laughing so hard he becomes tired. He tells her that he will think of her face before he goes to sleep that night, which Maria finds both sweet and a bit strange. The next day, they meet for their steak dinner, and Renato looks much more refreshed. He thanks her because he finally slept well for the first time in years. Maria tells him he should take better care of himself, which seems to surprise him. Their meal is cut short by urgent royal business, so Renato sends Maria home in a carriage. Maria realizes too late that she is in a different carriage and is being taken to an unfamiliar location. She is confronted by Eleonora, a noblewoman who believes she was Renato's lover. In reality, Renato had only stayed close to Eleonora to gather evidence of bribery against her father, Baron. Baron has been arrested, and Eleonora is furious that she was used as an informant instead of being loved. She kidnaps Maria and demands she write a letter to Renato to trade her life for Baron's freedom. Eleonora even threatens to send Renato one of Maria's fingers if she refuses. Maria is not intimidated and simply thinks the plan is brutal. Back at the palace, Renato discovers Maria never made it home and immediately blames himself for leaving her alone. He ignores Raimondo's attempts to calm him and rides out on his horse to find her. Eleonora's henchmen try to restrain Maria, but they know nothing about House Anavazzi. They are a legendary family of martial artists, and Maria was chosen as the heir because she is the strongest of all her sisters. She begins to count to 10, just like in her family's song, while systematically defeating all 10 of the hired men. By the time Renato arrives at the scene, the men are all on the floor. Maria quickly shifts into a performance of a scared damsel in distress to protect her reputation as a noble lady. However, Renato admits he saw everything from the moment she started fighting. Maria is embarrassed and thinks her life as a proper noble is over. On their way back, Renato sits her down and checks her for injuries, even though she is clearly fine. He tells her that the authorities will deal with Eleonora and her father's bribery. While Maria is sitting on his lap, Renato explains that the mental fog he has carried for years finally lifted when he was with her. He describes meeting her as a revelation from God. He then shocks her by asking her to marry him. Maria is stunned. Maria finds herself completely lost inside the royal castle of Rubini after being there for less than 2 minutes. Instead of following her escorts, she follows her instincts into the bushes to rescue a small, fluffy dog named Macaron. The dog belongs to the Queen Mother, who had been frantically searching for her missing pet. Maria emerges from the shrubbery with slightly ruined clothes and leaves in her hair. The Queen Mother is deeply grateful for the rescue, and the king finds the whole situation hilarious. Renato watches her with thinly disguised panic and pride, quietly claiming her as his Maria to the surrounding attendants. This unconventional introduction secures her official selection as the crown princess that very day. Now that she is officially the fiancée of the future king, Maria must undergo intensive crown princess training. The training is overseen by her best friend Aida, who has accepted the task with the grace of someone who has completely made peace with her own canceled engagement. Maria's martial arts background makes her a natural at the physical aspects of etiquette, allowing her to master formal poses and gestures faster than expected. However, her energetic personality remains a challenge to restrain. She continues to run through the hallways, skip during lessons, and speak every unhinged thought that enters her head in real time. Raimondo is constantly on edge, watching her lack of decorum. During a break in her training, Maria encounters Rosalia in a castle hallway. Rosalia belongs to a family famous for the perfume business and attempts to establish a social hierarchy by insulting Maria, calling her a bumpkin. Maria's straightforward and smooth-brained nature makes her completely immune to the insult. Instead of getting angry or defensive, Maria turns toward Rosalia with genuine curiosity and tells her that she smells absolutely amazing. Rosalia is stunned because no one has ever responded to her hostility with a sincere compliment about her family's products. Maria becomes genuinely excited about Rosalia's moisturizing seashell powder and her seaside villa. By the end of the conversation, Rosalia has accidentally become Maria's friend. She punishes Maria by inviting her on a summer vacation, promising to book a swimsuit boutique appointment and take her to the beach. Maria eventually finds a quiet moment to speak with Renato. Renato notices her hairpin, which is a brass knuckle-style accessory featuring the Anavazzi family crest. Maria explains the tradition that every daughter in her family makes one and eventually incorporates their husband's crest into a new design. She expresses worry that she isn't worthy of incorporating the royal sigil, but Renato stops her immediately, insisting that she is more than worthy of the tradition. Maria shares that she needs to travel home to visit her 4-year-old brother Teo, whom she hasn't seen since transferring to the kingdom. Renato is visibly worried that she might not come back after the 6-day journey, but Maria reassures him by admitting she wants to see him again too. Renato prepares a massive list of gifts for her family and even plans to visit her kingdom personally in the future to meet them properly. The most terrifying part of Maria's new life is a mandatory tea party with Queen Rubini. Queen Rubini is known for cold silence and intense, frightening scrutiny. As they sit together, Maria's inner monologue becomes a frantic mess of self-doubt. She misinterprets every one of Queen Rubini's sighs as a sign of failure and assumes Queen Rubini has been sick of her since the first 5 seconds of the meeting. Maria coaches herself through the meal, forcing herself to take small bites and make no sound while smiling perfectly. She even accidentally asks Queen Rubini, "How's that?" out loud after completing a polite gesture. Queen Rubini remains stone-faced, which leads Maria to believe she has already failed the test. Chaos erupts when several arrows are shot into the garden from the palace rooftops. Maria reacts instantly, flipping a heavy tea table over in one motion to act as a shield for Queen Rubini. She identifies the origin point of the attack before the royal guards have even finished reacting to the sound. While the guards scramble, Maria focuses entirely on Queen Rubini's safety, ignoring the danger to herself and asking if Queen Rubini is all right. Queen Rubini's reaction is the opposite of what her cold behavior suggested. She begins slapping the floor in pure joy. It turns out Queen Rubini is a massive superfan of Maria's martial arts skills and had been trying to hide her excitement behind a poker face the entire time. She finds Maria dashing and admits she only heard about Maria's previous fight with the kidnappers secondhand and desperately wanted to witness her prowess in person. The knights immediately rush to secure the area after the attack, and although Maria is relieved that everyone is safe, she cannot stop mourning the macarons that are scattered across the grass. The maids offer to clean up and tell her to return to the palace since Renato will surely be worried, but she runs off on her own. Raimondo frantically searches for her because she has a habit of wandering off, but before he finds her, a man suddenly appears in front of her with his arms spread wide. Maria dodges and instantly recognizes him as Lord Ireneo, Renato's cousin, and quickly understands why Aida calls him the enemy of all women. He continues showering her with compliments and insists that if he had met her before Renato, she would have fallen for him instead. Maria dismisses his words and reminds him that he always says things like this and will only end up angering Renato again. He repeatedly tries to touch her hair and get closer to her, but she effortlessly dodges every attempt. Raimondo finally arrives and warns him that he will report everything to Renato if he continues. Ireneo retreats but still invites Maria on a date to eat peach tarts at a newly opened bakery. Raimondo reminds her that many people will approach her because she is the crown prince's fiancée and that she must always remain careful. Maria thinks there is no need to worry because she can simply strike anyone who becomes too persistent. Later, she dramatically reenacts the assassination attempt for Renato and the knight captain. She explains that she senses a presence, kicks the table over, and watches 2 arrows strike it. When she searches for the attacker, nobody is there, and all the colorful macarons tragically fly through the air before crashing onto the grass. Renato and the knights cannot help laughing at her vivid description, and Raimondo notes that it is rare to see the prince smile so openly. The knights find no clues about the assassin's identity or motives. The knight captain becomes so impressed by Maria's reflexes and athletic ability that he wants her to join the knights. Renato then kneels before her and sincerely thanks her for protecting his mother. Maria blushes and insists that she merely benefits from the strength of the palace table. He suddenly moves close to her face, making her think he is about to kiss her, but he simply pinches her cheeks and checks whether she has been injured. Because there may still be danger, he asks her to stay at the palace for the night. Raimondo later reports that the queen cannot stop praising Maria and seems completely fascinated by her. Renato decides it is probably safer to send her home because his mother is becoming completely captivated by her. Evening approaches, and Maria prepares to leave, but turns around and shyly admits that she is happy because she has got to see Renato twice in one day. Raimondo immediately orders a carriage and additional guards, and the prince watches her depart with a pout. Afterward, Raimondo informs him that the route back to Muro has become increasingly dangerous because bandit activity is rising. Renato becomes troubled and wonders whether Maria would have faced these dangers if he had never proposed to her. He orders increased security and hopes she stays away from danger. Meanwhile, Maria does her best to ease his worries by continuing her daily routine and maintaining her martial arts training. During class, she absent-mindedly tests the classroom desk and concludes that it would make a poor shield. During art class, she notices the knights constantly following her and can even identify Rosalba Rosalia by the sound of her footsteps. Rosalia and her companions have drawn beautiful flowers from the botanical garden, and one of the girls reveals an impressive sketch. However, Rosalia becomes nervous when Maria asks to see her own drawing. It turns out to be simple and childlike, but still adorable. In return, Rosalia grabs Maria's sketchbook and becomes horrified by her strange drawing style, describing it as avant-garde, because merely looking at it fills her with anxiety. She quickly leaves, declaring that she will never forget this experience. Maria simply giggles because Rosalia finally remembers her full name. Soon afterward, Maria senses another presence and discovers Ireneo peeking from behind a bush. He claims that he is merely visiting his old school, but she is convinced that he has come to look at girls. He insists that she is the only one in his eyes and expresses interest in her unusual art style because it resembles neither Baroque nor neoclassical art. Since he loves painting, he asks her to visit an art museum with him someday. His smile reminds Maria of her little brother before he eventually leaves because someone is calling for him. Raimondo later reads a lengthy report about Maria's busy schedule, but she keeps falling asleep while listening. He even mentions that the mountain path to her homeland is infested with bandits, yet she still nods off. He cannot believe she is leaving the next day. During morning training, Maria demonstrates a perfectly executed kick, earning Renato's applause. She eagerly performs an entire martial arts form and unleashes a punch that creates a strong gust of wind. Renato becomes fascinated, and she enthusiastically explains every detail of the technique. When he asks why she has never shown him forms 40 and 60, she explains that they are secret techniques known only to her and her father. Renato then has her sit down and gently wipes the sweat from her face while expressing concern about how busy she has become. She explains that House Anavazzi has served as royal guards for generations, and that she originally trained as the heir. She recalls being such an energetic child that people often mistook her for a boy. She remembers finding an injured rabbit one day and nearly being crushed by a falling tree, but her father saved her by punching the tree away and taught her that their martial arts exist to protect those who are precious to them. Even though she is no longer the heir, she still feels the same way. However, after Teo was born, she senses that her father became awkward around her. Whenever she spent time with her little brother, he barged into the room and accidentally called Maria's name when he meant to call Teo's. Despite this, she does not resent him. Renato believes that things will eventually return to normal. He suddenly pulls her into a hug and admits that he will miss her while she is away. Maria panics and worries that she will dirty his clothes with sweat, but he does not care. She also worries that he might be attacked while she is gone and promises not to do anything dangerous. Unfortunately, hearing her promise only makes him feel even more certain that she will somehow end up in trouble. At last, Maria says her farewells and begins her journey back to her homeland.
And that is it for today. If you enjoyed this recap, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and feel free to write whatever you want in the comments section. Thank you for watching.